like I said, we're here to discuss your role as a school level coordinator for the FSAA assessment that will be starting very, very soon. So some housekeeping, okay? This presentation is being recorded so that you know. All participants should be muted, so please keep yourself on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to post those questions on the chat. We'll go ahead and we will monitor the chat as we go, and then we will address the questions as we go. We'll stop and so forth, okay? So, whatever question you have, try to post them to everyone. I mean, really, if you have a question, someone else has the same question. So really, no question is a dumb question, okay? I'm telling you that we all have questions. I have questions myself, okay? So if I know and if Kathy knows, we will answer it to the best of our knowledge. And if we can't, we'll get the answer for you. So just post them to everyone. That way everyone can see them and we'll address them as we go.
Okay, so before we go further, let me talk really quickly about everything that's going on right now, and a little disclaimer. What Yvonne and I are going to talk about today in this presentation is everything that we know thus far. An emergency briefing was published Wednesday night. The briefing number is 29437. I'm going to repeat that again, 29437. It's everything the assessment department knows thus far. It's going to have a list of all the window extensions. As you know, our program, FSAA, now has the window extension to May, and I'll go over the dates specifically later on in the presentation. With regard to everything else that I know you have questions on, we just haven't been given that information. So at this time, the Department of Education expects all students to take all of the Florida statewide assessments this spring. That would include Access for ELLs, the FSA, and the FSAA. And I understand that that brings with it a bunch of complications this year because you have some of your schools, the majority of your students are learning from home. You have teachers teaching from home, and that complicates things, and I understand that. But absent of any other directive or guideline or information from the state, we just have to proceed under the assumption that we test as usual. I will go into more detail later on in this presentation regarding your MSO students, regarding your teachers that are on medical leave, etc. But for now, all I can say is, guys, this is everything that we know so far. I know this is going to be a very challenging testing season. That weekly briefing gives a little information regarding the fact that, well, first of all, I just want to make it clear, all statewide assessments must be conducted face-to-face. So students learning from home, there's no remote option, I'm saying, for students learning from home. So it's not like the test can be done virtually. Additionally, your teachers that are teaching from home would not be able to administer the test remotely. If you have a teacher on medical leave, you can't have them come back because they are under doctor's orders to stay home. If you have a teacher who happens to be teaching from home, not on medical leave, but for some reason they are teaching from home, that's not an issue that our office can help you with, nor Yvonne's office can help you with. That's an issue that you would have to solve operationally. So your administration would, I suppose, need to contact the region for guidance regarding that. But the bottom line, as we know, as far as we know so far, the state is requiring that all students participate, and that would include your students learning from home. And it must be done back at the schoolhouse in person with a test administrator. So that's the information we have so far. I know you have questions, and as Yvonne stated, you can place them in the chat. Do me a big favor when you're asking us questions. There's no need to direct message us the questions. Because what ends up happening is I get asked the same question over and over and over. And I think any question you have, I know there are other people who have the same exact question. There's no need to be shy here. We're all friends. If it's something personal that you need to talk to me about, you can shoot me an email. But And towards the end of the presentation, when we have some time, we'll unmute the mics and let you guys talk.
Definitely.
All right, and then we'll stop. Yvonne and I will stop periodically and see or address any of the questions in the chat, so you can do that as well.
So right now, Kathy, we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So somebody wants to know what happens if MSO students don't come in to take the test.
The same thing that would happen in a regular school year. They'd just be marked absent.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else that we can do. They would just be marked absent. Now, in terms of accountability, we don't know what that means. Do we have to have the 95% tested? We don't know. But we've been in communication with the state probably since the summer regarding all of these accountability issues, which we know will be a factor. We knew there was going to be an issue bringing kids back into the building. We knew parents were not going to want to bring their students back into the building. So, like I said, we just have to assume right now, absent of any other guidance from the state, that we're just testing as usual. If a student doesn't come, they're just going to be marked absent.
Exactly.
Any other questions, Iman?
And yeah, just mark them absent. I mean, the need to document that the parents don't want to bring them in. I mean, if they send you an email, keep the emails, you know.
Right.
Anything like that, but at this time, there's no need for you to do anything else except mark them absent. You know,
right. And if you look at the briefing that I noted, it does say to document. So if by documentation we mean if the parent emails you, obviously keep the email. If it's a phone conversation, keep a log. The date of the phone conversation, the date it took place, who you spoke with. Obviously, the name of the student and the results of that conversation.
Now, yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we had another question that someone else is asking, that if a teacher on ADA wants to come in to test, what happens? Well, in that case, well, no, let me tell you. So this is really an administrator's decision. Okay. I know because I also have certain people in ADA, and it's a conversation that the administrator has to have with that teacher, okay, based on whatever their letter says. So, you know, in that case, have them contact administration. This is an administrator's decision with that teacher. They have to make that call for that. We have nothing to do with that, okay?
We are working on a notification that you can send to parents. The Office of Assessment is working on that. We're trying to put something together that you could send home to parents, but we're waiting for it to be reviewed and approved. Can they be marked absent for the window? For our program, yes, and I will get to that. There is something in the online system called reason not assessed, and you would just put the student is absent. So, and I will get to that. Absent of any decision either way regarding testing for the Department of Education in terms of any kind of waivers for graduation, any kind of waivers for third grade promotion, any kind of waivers for any kind of accountability, we have to assume that we just have to proceed as normal. So, I mean, and I get it. You guys have a lot of questions about that. And you know, you can talk to me about it afterwards.
And when it comes to testing waiver that our students are eligible for, we will discuss that in the presentation.
Right. And remember, in order, and Yvonne will get to this, but in order to do a waiver, the student has to test. So, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, Yvonne. I think we can move on.
All righty. So let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of the FSAA. So we know, like Kathy says, that in our state, right, everyone is mandated to test, right? And under ESSA, students with a significant cognitive disability were also given the option to test, but it all depends on, you know, their level of functioning and certain different aspects that we go through a state checklist to decide, you know, which test a student should take. So the FSAA has two different assessments. We have the performance task and we have the data folio. Now, a lot of you still may not be aware or may know what the data folio is, but I'm going to give you a little quick overview of what they are in a minute. So what I was saying was that in order for a student to be eligible to take the FSAA, this is an IEP team decision, right? The IEP team is the one responsible for making that determination as to who takes the FSAA, which FSAA they take, and most of all, and number one, are they going to participate on an access point curriculum? So this all starts with the checklist when you are having that IEP meeting, right? And you come to these three main questions. They have to be answered correctly, okay? Currently, we are in the process of editing the IEP and ESE EMS with the questions to provide kind of a little bit more accountability to those that are part of the IEP team, because of the fact that the state is looking at this very carefully. They're looking at what we call that 1%, and I'll discuss that 1% in a minute. So we have to be sure that when you're sitting in that meeting, you're looking at these questions as a team and making the best decision for that student, right? And the first question is our main question. Does the student have a significant cognitive disability? Now, number one here is that a student who has SLD is not a student that has a significant cognitive disability. That is our number one exceptionality that we get flagged on. We cannot have any student who is an LD student on a modified curriculum. That is a big no-no, okay? So you have to watch out for that. Second question here pretty much says that you've looked at all of the accommodations, and with all of the accommodations available, that student still needs modification to the curriculum, okay? And then the third question asks you that the student needs to have the access point curriculum in order to be instructed for English language arts, math, science, and social studies, you know, across all settings. So if you, part of the IEP team, respond yes to these three questions, all three questions must be a yes, then the student is placed on a modified curriculum, and then the student participates in the FSAA assessment, whether it's performance task or data folio. Okay, so what helps the team make that right decision and guide them? Well, the state has put out a guide called the FSAA Assessment Planning Resource Guide for IEP teams, okay? And this can be found by going to the FSAA portal. Now, this guide is a must for anybody that's participating on that IEP team to make that right decision. It explains to you what a significant cognitive disability is, what are the questions in the checklist that I just discussed, what that cognitive disability means, and what are the exceptionalities that fall under that. It also explains that when the student, when you make the decision to place a child on a modified curriculum, how do you determine if it's going to be performance task or data folio? So, it pretty much starts with, yes, the student has a disability. Let me turn on my pointer. Yes, the student has a disability. It is a significant cognitive disability. We know that even with modifications, this child still needs even with accommodations, the child still needs modifications. So then you go the route of the modified curriculum. The student is placed on the access point curriculum, right? The student participates in the Florida Standards Alternate Assessment, and then you make the decision whether it's performance task or data folio. So everything is explained in this guide. It is highly, highly recommended. It's not required at the moment, but it's highly recommended that everybody knows, because the state is coming down and looking at our data. So we really need to be sure that we're making the appropriate decisions for these students. Now, the FSAA performance task, which that's what we're here to discuss today, right, is an assessment that is administered to each student individually by the student's teacher. And that is highly recommended by the student's teacher. Okay, and you'll see throughout the presentation why that is so important, because the teacher should know this child best, right? Should know how the student functions, should know what the child's primary mode of communication is. So this is important. But being that it's a crazy year, I know that a lot of things are happening. If the teacher of record is not able to assess the child, who else can do this? Well, a certified teacher can do it, another licensed professional, but it should really be someone who works with that student extensively, okay, and is trained to give the assessment. So trained to give the assessment, we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, okay? But you have to be sure that they all fall under this category. Now, the purpose of this assessment is to show mastery of the Florida Standards access points. Students typically select an answer to a set of questions. They have 3 response options, but instead of like the typical bubble in the answer, it's based on pictures, text, and symbols where the student chooses their answers, okay? Now, the student is able to use their primary mode of communication, and what that means is that it doesn't necessarily mean that the child or the student has to be verbal, right? The student can point and can point to the right answer, so that's their primary mode of communication. The student uses eye gazing, okay, and does it appropriately and is able to select the right answers. So that's their primary mode of communication. So the teacher, well, not you, but the teacher that works with the student is the one that knows the student best and is able to make the correct determination as to how the student is going to respond. So that's why that is very important to have the teacher of record. Now, test administration. Who can administer this test? Well, in order for the teacher to be able to administer the test to students, they have to be trained, okay? And there's 2 ways of training the teachers. First of all, if it's a first-time teacher, never administered the test, that teacher has to participate in what we call the FSAA face-to-face training. We've already had 2 training sessions this month. The last session is next week on the 24th. Now, that session is already closed because it reached capacity, but that doesn't mean they can't still participate. So if you have a teacher who still has not been trained, and how do you know they've been trained? Well, we have sent out emails with a list to you all. One that says teachers trained from 2015 to 2021, and that goes through January of 2021. And then we send another list of those that just took the training this month, and they're still pending to complete, the activities, but they did attend the training. So if your teacher's name are on one of those 2 lists, they've already satisfied the requirement of the face-to-face training, and they don't have to do it again. But those teachers do have to complete Module 4 that is located in the portal, okay? That Module 4 talks about the uploading of the students' responses and everything else, and we're going to go through that in a couple of minutes. Now, once the teacher has already attended the face-to-face training once, then every year they have to recertify for the test. How do you recertify? Well, the teacher must take the 4 online modules to be able to recertify, modules 1 through 4 that can be found on the FSAA portal. And we'll talk about the portal as well and how you can find all the information to the portal, but they're here through the links, okay? All right. Can we please resend the list of teachers? We will resend them to you. No worries. Okay. So let's talk about the resources that these teachers have for test administration. So when you go into that portal, and here's the link again to get into the portal, it's very easy. And if you ever forget the link, my little easy way of getting in there is I go to Google, I type FSAA Cognia. Here's the word Cognia. Okay, that's the test vendor. When I type those 2 words, it takes me straight to this page. Okay, that's all you have to remember, FSAA Cognia. So when you get to this page, this is the FSAA portal page. On this page, you will see that it has 2 tabs on the top. You have a Datafolio portal tab, and you have a Performance Task tab. So if you want to know more about Datafolio, feel free to go in there. But like I said, today we're focusing on the performance task. So once you click on the performance tasks button, it takes you to the next page where you will find the teacher resources, right? Here you have 3 tabs on the top, and the first tab is the teacher resources. And here on this tab, you will be able to find all of your guides, the teacher administration manual, okay, that the teachers should be familiar with. They should download this manual every year because every year there's something new. There's an update of some kind, okay? So they are able to download the manual. The practice materials are here as well, and we'll talk about the practice materials in a minute. Your online training modules are found on this page. The tutorials are found on this page. Train the Trainer PowerPoint videos and activities are found on this page, as well as the online training resource guide, which is the next guide that's available so that teachers understand how they have to upload to the system. And in order to upload to the system, teachers have to go to the last button here that you find in the portal to upload all of the students' responses. And we're going to talk about uploading in a little bit when we get there. Now, we're going to talk to you about the dates in a few minutes, but before administration begins, that's when the teachers have to complete all of the modules, okay? So the modules are due before administration. No teacher can administer the test without either having attended the FSAA face-to-face administration training and Module 4, if they're new, or recertifying by completing the 4 modules. Now, Kathy sent everyone a list that is updated every Friday by the state that tells you what modules your teachers have completed. Okay, so that's the FSAA module list. Kathy, I don't remember what we titled it, but
Here, actually, I'm going to put the link in the chat. Folks, hold on a second. Let me make sure it's there. Okay, so let me explain. So there's 2, and Yvonne's talking about this, but I want to make sure everybody understands there's 2 components to training. One is the face-to-face training, and I just uploaded a PDF document that lists all of the teachers that have been trained face-to-face from 2015 to our latest session on February 10th. Remember, we are having one more February 24th. The second component is the module completion. Teachers need to view the modules every year, and based on whether they've attended the face-to-face training in the past to recertify, they need to view all 4 modules. If they've just completed the face-to-face training the current school year, they only need to complete module 4. So the second link that I have in the chat is a link to a Google Doc that will tell you teachers who have completed the modules as of last week. They run the report, the state runs the report weekly. I get the link, I get the report, I download it every Friday. They haven't posted it yet for today. As soon as they do, I will post it. But teachers on this module completion have done the modules as of last Friday. The first column will show you the module number they completed, then it has their name and their email address. Sorry, Yvonne.
And did this include, Kathy, those that are pending? Did we include them on the same list? No, right? The ones that are that attended the 2 this month so far?
Yes, it includes all of the teachers that went to a face-to-face as of February 10th. So they're still pending approval, but they were participate in the face-to-face, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So if they are, and we've had some confusion with that, if they are on that list, they don't need to attend the face-to-face again. They just need those teachers, if they were new this year, they need to complete module 4. If those teachers took the face-to-face in previous years, they need to complete all modules 1 through 4. Okay, so we just want to make that clear. Okay, and you can check the modules. No need to email us to check the modules for you. You have the list. You have the link there. You go in there. You look at your teachers, and you'll see completed 1, completed 2, completed 3, completed 4. It's up to you to check that. You know, it is a recertification guideline by the state. And I'll tell you why, because in previous years, the state has come down to Miami-Dade County Public Schools, has come to a school site and has said, show me who's testing today, has walked into your classroom and has sat there with you to watch you test the students, and then has checked that you are certified. So please, you don't want to lose your certificate over this. You know, not you, but the teachers. So please make sure that they comply with the requirement. Okay, so I was talking to you about the practice materials. So on that same tab in the portal, teachers will see a tab that says practice materials. When you go in there, they have the practice materials that the teachers can download and print so that they can practice in the class. So 2 different years are available, 16-17 and 19-20. Now, in that file, there is a little file that says read me. Please read me first before they print, because it's a lot of printing and then it will come out wrong. These are set to specific parameters, and if they don't read the instructions before printing, they come out wrong, and then you're going to throw away a lot of paper. So please tell the teachers to read the read me first for instructions and then print the materials. Now, these materials are not secure. Anyone can use them. They're by grade levels, like you see here, 3 through 5. Okay, then there's 6 through 9, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. Okay, so really what this does is provides the teacher and the students the ability to practice taking the test, you know, the functions of the test and not necessarily the content. Okay, so it doesn't matter really what content area it is. It's more for the practice of, excuse me, the stimulus and the response items, the passages, the writing, all of the components of the test. Okay, so it is highly recommended that the teachers are using this in the class. Okay, let's keep going here. Like I said, when you go into the portal, on that first page for teacher resources, when you go all the way to the bottom of that page, you will find the modules for the teacher. And this is how the modules are structured. Assessment overview, module 1, administration procedures, module 2, before, during, and after the administration, module 3. And then you have your module 4, which is how to upload to the online system. Now, I know that most of you that are here, if you are an LEA, I know you play different roles, not just the SLC, but a lot of you may be the LEA, maybe program specialist, maybe staffing specialist. I mean, we wear a lot of hats, right? So the state had put out a briefing at the end of last calendar year that by the beginning of this year, anyone that participated in an IEP team and made decisions for a student on a modified curriculum should take module 1 assessment overview. Okay, so if you're not the teacher, but you are participating somehow in an IEP meeting, you need to make sure that you yourself have completed module 1. Okay, a briefing came out at the end of the calendar year that had to be done by the beginning of this school year. Okay, so better late than never is how I say. If you, like I said, are in one of those roles, supporting IEP meetings somehow, stepping in, LEA, you know, a program specialist, staffing specialist, whatever it may be, please take this assessment overview. Okay. Because they're cracking down that we are really looking at the students that we're placing on modified curriculum. Okay, so let's talk about the sessions and the test. So this test is divided into different sessions, okay? Now, all content areas will have session 1 and session 2. Now, session 3 is only for the ELA and for the writing portion of the test. And this is for students in grades 4 through 10, okay? And we'll talk about the writing in a few minutes. But you will see that the sessions of this test, or so that you will know, I mean, the teachers are the ones that know because they're trained on this, but the sessions, like session 1, is an adaptive session for students. It has different item sets, so different sets of questions. It's adaptive, meaning that the students have to respond correctly to the first question in order to continue to the next question. If the students do not respond correctly to question 1, they have to move to the next set of questions, okay? So that's how it is adaptive, okay? Now, session 2 is non-adaptive. Okay, it only has 3 sets of questions. Students will respond to all questions, whether it is correct or incorrect, all right? And then we have session 3. Session 3 is also non-adaptive. All students that participate in the ELA grades 4 through 10 must participate in the writing, and the writing has 2 components. It has prompt 1 and prompt 2. Now, prompt 1, very basic. It has a reading passage, 5 questions that the students respond to. But prompt 2, the students have to produce a writing sample. Okay, so you may say, how is that possible? Well, it is very possible, and the teachers are trained to do so. So that is why, once again, it is very important that the teacher of record that's providing instruction for ELA is that teacher that is administering this test, okay? It is very difficult for a teacher that does not understand how the student responds, how, what their formal mode of communication is, to be able to structure and plan for this test, okay? So highly recommended, but like I said, we understand that this is a COVID year, right? Sometimes someone else will have to take the place of the teacher, but as long as they are trained and they understand the process, then, this will be done correctly, okay? Please know that the writing is aligned to the rest of the test. So if the writing component is not completed correctly and uploaded correctly, then the students will not get a score on the ELA at all, okay? And that is very important. And we'll talk about scores in a little bit. Now, like I told you, the writing prompt, right, is designed to assess a student's ability to compose a response to a text. All students in grades 4 through 10 will participate in the writing portion of the test. Now, sequence of administration for all elementary, middle school, EOCs. It does not matter which content area the student is assessed in first, okay? That's pretty much the teacher's decision, okay? The only thing that you must abide by is once you start a content area, you finish the content area, okay? And we'll talk about the test and stopping breaks and all of those things, because this is really an untimed, okay? It's not regulated to be, like the FSAA, you have to take the session and finish the session and you cannot go back to the session. Well, this test does not function in that way. This test is very accommodating for a student's needs. So let's say the teacher decides that she's going to start with science, and she starts the science test and things are not going well. She has the right to stop the test for that student, because we want the students to be able to answer the best way that they can. So if it's not a good test day, stop the test and continue the test tomorrow. But tomorrow the teacher is going to continue with the science. You're not going to go back to what she did previously, he did previously. They're going to continue from that point forward, but they can stop the test and continue in various, over various days, in other words. But once you start a session, you finish that session, okay? And like I said, this test really is untimed. You can provide the students with ample breaks. If the student seems to be fatigued, stop the test, take a break. Try to stop the test after the item set. So if a set of questions has 3 questions, we ask and we tell the teachers, don't stop after question 1. Get through that question set. It's usually 3, and then take that break. If the student is not engaged, stop the test, but always at the end of the item set. If the student cannot continue that same day, continue it on another day. The window has been extended, and Kathy's going to talk about the window in a little bit. So we have ample time to do it. Now, what's going to be an issue and a factor is if the student is in school, if the student is MSO, are they going to come in? Nothing says that if the student is having a good test day, can you test from beginning to the end of day? That's up to you. That's up to the teacher. You know that student best, but I caution you. When it comes to waiving an assessment, and all those things that we're going to talk about later, right? If the student does not provide a specific number of responses to a test, the test is kind of voided, okay? We get something back called a status 16. Status 16 says the student did not provide enough answers to be able to get a score. So that and not taking the test is pretty much the same thing. So you have to be sure that the student has ample amount of answers or responses to the test to be able to get a score. So if you start the test and you see that the student is not engaged and not providing responses at all and things are not going well, I suggest you stop and you wait for another day or after lunch or whatever it may be, because if you don't get enough answers, we will get back a score of status 16, which means pretty much they didn't take the test and they have to do it again. Okay? So that's just a word of caution. Okay, Kathy, do we have questions?
Yeah, let me bring up one really quick. Does an administrator sitting in the IEP meeting have to take the module? Are they considered support staff?
Okay, so the LEA, which many times is the assistant principal, must take module 1. The principal, no, I really never ever see the principal sitting in the IEP, but if they are sitting in the IEP meeting,
yeah, this is the,
for some reason, if the principal's there, yes, they should take module 1 as well. But most of the time, we know that the LEA usually, most of the time, may be the assistant principal over ESE. That person or anybody else that is the LEA, that one is number 1, should have taken module 1, and it's just module 1. They don't have to complete any other module.
Yvonne, was there a briefing sent out about this?
There was a briefing sent out about that, but if you ask me right now, I don't know what it is. But I will see that once you take the lead here, I'll look for the briefing number because I didn't get it.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're good to go on.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so every year administrators are asked to conduct observations of the teachers, right? It's not every teacher. Every year we have a different criteria as to how many teachers should be observed, but due to COVID and other factors, we are able to just the administrator is able to just provide 1 observation this year. So the administrator at the school site, whether it's the principal or the assistant principal, can only has to provide us with 1 teacher observation, okay? And that observation will be returned to us in the DAC-AR envelope, and Kathy's going to talk to you more about that in a bit, but only 1 observation this year. Do you want to say anything about that now, Kathy, or later?
No, I'll get to it later.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now, in the test administration manual on page 77, there is a teacher self-reflection form. This is not mandatory, it's, teachers, it's voluntary for them to do, but this form is, I find it to be a good tool for the teachers, especially new teachers. Why? Because it kind of tells them everything that they have to do before the administration, during the administration, after the administration. They can make comments here as to what went well and what didn't go well. Why? Because at the end of the assessment, the teachers will be sent a link to a survey. And this helps them remember what went well and what didn't go well, and any feedback that they may have for the state. And believe you me, that those surveys are reviewed, all of them. And every year in the summer, I sit on an assessment at an assessment meeting for the state, and the state goes through all of the responses that were sent on the survey and anything that they feel has to be addressed and has to be changed on the assessment. So they do look at those things. So we ask the teachers to please voice their concerns, their feedback, and it starts with this tool. And if they don't do this, at least please have the teachers complete the survey after the assessment that we will send out to you all. All right, so let's see if we have any questions.
Yeah, hold on. So just some clarification, folks. That administrator observation form is done by a school administrator observing a test administrator, or test administration, I should say.
Exactly. And just one.
Just one, exactly. Just one. Usually we had one, I think, per grade or subject or something like that, but this year just one, for the entire administration. Question, should all teachers that write IEPs grades K through 5 complete module 1, whether they administer the test or not?
Well, kind of like a best practice, if you have ESE teachers who work with students that may be placed on a modified curriculum, I would say yes, have them take it. It's not the requirement. It's not the requirement. Right now, the requirement, based on the briefing, was LEAs, staffing specialists, program specialists, people like that. It didn't say anything about teachers, because teachers have to do it when they administer the test. But if you are a school that has a lot of students on modified curriculum, okay, and you never know when a teacher is going to be part of this IEP team, that decision has to be made to place a student on modified curriculum, I would have them complete module 1, because it's just the overview of who should be placed on a modified curriculum and on access points and taking the FSAA, okay? So, I highly recommend that they do.
And thank you, Amanda. Amanda's indicated the briefing number for or anyone involved in support staff viewing module 1, and that's 29203.
You rock, Amanda. Thank you so much. Okay, so someone else is asking if the administrator, if they observe one section of the test to complete the form, or more than one. They should observe at least one session of one content area. Okay, so one content area, one session is sufficient. Okay, so let's talk about accountability and learning gains. So right now, like everything else, we really don't know how schools are going to be accountable, right? And how learning gains are really going to work, because in the past, all of this was pretty much calculated based on the previous year. And being that last year, we had no assessment and we have no scores for last year, we don't know exactly how they're going to calculate this. And then what happens is, if a student transitions between between elementary to middle or middle to high school within that time period that we did have that last assessment to now, there's really no scores to be able to align accountability. So it's a little crazy, but I'm going to tell you how we did it before, so that you at least have an idea of how it worked, right? So any student who scores at an achievement level of 3 or higher, right, pretty much had mastered the standard, right? Mastered the access point standard in that area. So back in 2017, the state put out the performance task scale scores that you see here on the screen. And here you can see the different levels: level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, kind of like the FSA, right? So here, when a student reached a level 3 or a level 4, they were pretty much on level for the access point standard, okay? Now, with that said, and that brought up a thought that I want you all to be aware of. When you have a student that is meeting standards at a level 4, okay, and gets a perfect score on the FSAA, you know what? That student should no longer most likely be on an access point curriculum. And that student um, should have an RT, right? To see, and this, let me tell you, this happens a lot. Sometimes with our third, fourth graders, because they were placed on modified curriculum early on, okay, and then went into modified curriculum automatically in third grade. And these, these students evolve a lot from kindergarten to third grade. Okay, so if you have a student who is reaching that level 4 at the end and getting a perfect score, most likely that student should not be on a modified curriculum. Okay, so please watch out for that. But any student that meets level 3, level 4 is meeting mastery of the scale score and of the access point curriculum. And those students and other students and pretty much everyone, and I'm going to show you, every student who participates on the FSAA performance task is able to make learning gains for the school. Okay, so for themselves and points for the school. So how that's structured is that any student who increases a level from 1 year to the next will have made a learning gain. Any student who scores at an achievement level 1 or 2 in the prior year and then raises the scale score, and I'm going to show you visually those scores in a minute, within that category, okay, gets a learning gain. Okay, any student who is an achievement level 3 and remains a 3 or remains a 4, right, it makes a learning gain. Or any student who's at a level 3 and goes higher in that category gets a learning gain. So I know that that's a lot of words, right? So let me show you visually what that means. Okay, so here you have the scale scores, right? So if a student moves from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3 to a level 4, right? From 1 year to the next, right? They made a learning gain, okay? The school gets a point, student gets a learning gain, right? If the student was a level 1 in the previous year or previous assessment, I really don't know how they're going to look at this year, but if they were a level 1 and within this category, it was divided into 3 subcategories, a low, a middle, a high. If they move from a low to a middle or from a middle to a high, they make a learning gain, okay? So this happens in a level 1. It happens at a level 2 as well. If they go from a low to a high, you make a learning gain. Or if they go from a low to a high in a level 3, they make a learning gain as well. So lots of possibilities. Now, if the student was a level 4 and they remain a level 4, also make a learning gain. Okay, so as you can see by that, there in that was for ELA, but in all the other ones for math and everything else, if the students are able to do that, they make learning gains. School makes points, school goes up. So if a teacher administers the test correctly, okay, practices with these students, I guarantee you that you will see learning gains. But I caution you once again, look at those kids who are level 4s and they are at the high scale score of that 4, meaning they have a perfect test score. Okay, those will be looked at. We do have a couple from 2019 that we are still researching, because if you have a student that's there, they most likely should not be on a modified curriculum. Okay, any questions on that?
Nope, we're good.
We're good? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see here. And that brings me to the end of my section. And I'm going to pass it over to Kathy. Kathy, do you want me to click or are you going to share your screen?
Let's hope this works. I think it's working. I shouldn't even say that. Hold on. Let me make sure.
Let me stop sharing mine just in case.
Oops. Hold on a second.
Now you try.
Yeah, I think you're seeing my screen. Let me
Yeah, I see you scroll.
Slide. Okay, good. All righty. Okay, folks, from this point on, Yvonne's going to be monitoring the chat. But I promise we'll answer as best as we can all of the questions that we have. All right, so let's talk about the spring administration. These are the courses that are assessed. It's basically the same courses that we assess through FSA, that are assessed through FSAA. So for ELA, it's grades 3 through 10. For math, 3 through 8. For science, 5 and 8. And then, of course, all of your EOCs. All right, so there was a weekly briefing published in the fall. It pertained to the geometry EOC that can now be used as a comparative score for Algebra 1, so high schools. Remember, last year we didn't test, so all of your students enrolled in Algebra 1 did not have an opportunity to test, same with students taking the FSA. So the state now has allowed the geometry assessment to be used as a comparative score and be substituted for the Algebra 1 requirement. So what that means is students who should have tested Algebra 1 last year didn't have that opportunity and are enrolled in geometry this year, they don't need to retake the Algebra 1. They can just use the geometry as a comparative score. What that means is they just take the geometry. If they pass, great, nothing needs to be done. If they don't pass, you're going to use that score for the waiver. I just want to make sure that you understand it so that students aren't taking algebra and geometry. They don't need to go back and retake that Algebra 1. Now, all of your 11th graders this year, they missed their opportunity last year to take the ELA grade 10 assessment. I have ordered materials for all of those students, so high schools. This year, you're going to be testing a lot more students, unfortunately, this year. So you'll be testing your 10th graders for ELA. You'll also be testing your 11th graders who missed the ELA opportunity last year. So they'll be testing. Remember, for graduation, they need a grade 10 ELA score, and they need an algebra or geometry score for graduation. And then any student who was supposed to take the EOC last year, let's say they were in biology or civics or US history, they do not need to retake any of those assessments this year. Remember, all of the course requirements regarding EOCs were waived last year, so all students received credit whether or not they took the EOC. This year, you're only going to administer EOCs to students enrolled in those courses. No need to retake anything. Okay, high schools, let's talk about your cohorts. So your current seniors, which should be in your 17-18 cohort, remember, they need an Algebra 1 or the geometry, or they need a grade 10 ELA. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go in to either run a report through File Download Manager or check each student in SPI. I find File Download Manager more useful when I need a list of students because the same information that is in File Download Manager is also in SPI. So if you need a list of seniors, go to File Download Manager. If you want to check students one by one, then you would go through SPI. So you want to make sure they have scores for those assessments so you can write waivers if needed or if they passed those assessments. Because our windows have been extended into May, that means the reporting of scores is going to be later than usual. Usually the score, I want to say those score reports come back by June. Late May or June. This year, the state is telling us it's going to go into July. So that's going to affect any senior that you have right now who's waiting on these scores for graduation. So unfortunately, they're not going to be able to graduate until the end of the summer. So keep that in mind. And I know Yvonne's going to touch on that regarding waivers and staffing. Okay, any of your students that are juniors right now, again, make sure that they test for the ELA grade 10. Those materials will be included in your shipment. And again, they can use the geometry for concordance. Okay, high schools, this is a little screenshot of SPI. So if you don't have access to File Download Manager and or SPI, you need to request access from your principal. If you're overseeing this assessment, you need access to those two programs. SPI has a screen called graduation flags, and if you wanted to check very quickly on a student whether or not they've met their assessment components for graduation. You can do that on the graduation flag screen. The flag screen has also been updated to include the comparative score for geometry. All right, Yvonne, you're better at this part regarding waivers and eligibility.
Okay. So you may know that a waiver eligibility depends, first of all, on the student's exceptionality, okay? It has to be one of the 13 categories that are listed there, okay? Student must have an IEP, of course. The student must have taken the test. So remember what I told you before, that let's say you have a student who sits in on the test, but when the scores come back, they do not obtain a score. You cannot waive the assessment if the student does not have a score. Okay. Now, what are some components of being able to waive the assessment? Let's say if the student does have a score, right? So in order for a score to be waived, you have to look at what the student did prior to the assessment. Did they pass the course? Okay. If you have a student that does not pass the access course, you should not waive that. You should not waive that assessment either, because they did not show that they mastered the course somehow. So you have to have documentation in order to justify why it is that you are writing the waiver. Okay, so please be sure that you read the tab on waivers. If you have any questions about waivers, we have, done spot checks on waivers sometimes, and we have found waivers without scores. And that is a big no-no. That means technically they don't have a waiver in place. So at the end, or the next slide, I believe it has the tab for the waivers. And I think on my phone I had, and I'm going to look real quick, Kathy, that I had the last briefing number for the waivers, and I'll let you know in a minute. I'm not going to hold you up, but the last briefing number for waivers, and it was recent because I just asked for it.
Here, while you're looking, Yvonne,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody knows. So FSAA is for grades 3 and up. We have no alternative assessments for students in grades K through 2, so you don't need to worry about assessing those.
And those briefing numbers are correct, okay? That's the last waiver briefing that went out. And there you can see the tab on waivers as well. So if you have any questions, please read that, okay? And then, but, they have to be done according to the guidelines.
Okie doke. All right, Yvonne, there's a question about a low-functioning Braille blind student who does not know Braille.
Okay, so I reached out to the person and I just let them know to please contact me if you have a specific question like that. I kind of have to get more information because it all depends. Did they just come into the school system? What has happened? So I can't answer that question really. But anytime you have a specific question like that, just reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get the right answer.
All right, thanks, Yvonne. Okay, moving on. So obviously with everything going on, I need to address safety precautions. So obviously students are going to need to, those that are learning from home are going to need to come back to the schoolhouse to test, maintain social distancing, use PPE. We have developed some guidelines for testing in person, and it's at that link there on the screen. With regard to MSO students, I know there's a lot of concern about that because probably the majority of your students are learning from home. My advice for now is when you get your test materials and the window opens, concentrate on your students that are reporting physically first and get them tested just in case they go in quarantine, because we do now have extra long testing windows, so you should be able to capture them at some point during the window. Then you can turn to MSO. Remember, they need to be invited back into the building. And if a parent refuses to bring the student in, just document that as best as you can. There was a briefing about Saturday and after hours testing. I understand this is something if you have the funds for, because you'd have to pay the test administrator hourly to bring them in after hours or on a Saturday. But I know some schools have incorporated Saturday testing. We just need to know about it. So you just need to develop a plan. There's a form in that briefing that is on the screen. You just need to get that plan to me, and we have to forward that plan to the Department of Education. All right, Yvonne, was there anything I need to address before I move forward?
No, I've been answering the questions. Oh, I mean, somebody is asking, and this is something that will transportation be provided for students whom
No.
have it on the IEP? No, no.
No,
That has nothing to
yeah.
do with assessment for transportation. I mean,
Right.
no.
Unfortunately, that's one of the things, again, it's another wrinkle in this whole
Yeah.
thing that you guys would have to
Figure out. Yeah.
yeah, I hate to say figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Unfortunately,
That's
I know,
beyond
guys, I'm
our.
so sorry.
That's beyond us. Transportation is beyond us.
Yeah.
There was another question as well about MSO students and practicing. Really, like, once again, this is a face-to-face assessment, so it's kind of difficult for you to practice. Now, let me tell you, there are great resources out there that the teachers can use. And the Access, for a minute I lost my train of thought. The Access Project website, it's called Access Project. And the Access Project website, they're always coming up with different things for teachers to use for modified curriculum and the assessment as well. So I'm sure that maybe at this point they've come up with something that you can use for MSO students to practice for the test, or even if let's say you have a student in class. I don't know if you're doing the dual. Some teachers are doing dual, some are not. Maybe if you have a student on MSO and you have a student that's live in front of you and you want to practice with the student and have another student watch on MSO. I mean, like I said, they're not secured materials. You can use them as you need to, but somehow if they're going to come into the school, they should kind of be aware. And that's a good question. I really haven't had that one before. But they should be aware of how the test is going to be structured.
Okay, I see a couple more questions. Do MSO students have to participate in practice tests as well? Like, and Yvonne kind of addressed that. So they don't have to, but you can. FAA scores, guys, cannot be used in place of the FSAA. Remember, they're two completely different tests.
Yeah.
So now any student that you have that did FAA, I'm assuming they are beyond the cohort that we're talking about now. So if you have a specific, email Yvonne about it. But any student who had an FAA in 10th grade, I'm assuming is aging out now.
Yeah.
Okay. So our timeline has changed a little for grades 3 through 8. The testing window has been extended through May 14th. You're probably in the process of getting materials right now. TDC, which always does an excellent job getting the stuff out to you guys. They were able to start delivery a little early. So as soon as you get those materials, don't forget, you need to open the box and inventory what's inside, make sure it matches your packing list. I've already had one school tell me they were short a book. That is fine prior to administration. Once the administration begins and you tell me you've lost a book, it's a entirely different situation. So please make sure you inventory the materials as soon as they enter your building. All responses need to be entered online for grades 3 through 8 by May 14th. And Yvonne and I always tell you, please make sure your teachers don't wait until the last couple of days, because something will always happen with technology. Because remember that last week, the entire state is on the online system. And even though our program is small, it's big enough to choke the system. So make sure teachers are entering those responses online in a timely manner. Okay, for high schools, you're going to start receiving materials beginning March 3rd and through the 11th. Again, inventory the materials as soon as they're in the building. The window has been extended to May 28th for grades 9 through 12. And of course, the responses need to be entered into the online system by May 28th. I will get into the online system and the username and passwords in just a bit. All right, so the district has published the standards, guidelines, and procedures for test administration and test security. It's posted online. It provides detailed guidelines for secure test administration. It applies to all personnel involved with any aspect of testing. This handbook is on the test chairperson website. And if you're new to testing, I would advise you download it and be familiar with it. Okay, as I stated before, delivery materials for grades 3 through 8 are already in effect. And for high schools, they'll begin March 3rd. Now, let me describe what you're getting. You're getting your boxes of materials. So they're white boxes of test materials. Inside those white boxes, you will see clear plastic bags. They started this last year, but remember last year, the majority of schools didn't even get to test because we closed school so early. The clear plastic bags are for when you return the materials. When you put your all of your test materials inside the box, you're going to put them inside a plastic bag first and then inside the box. It's just an added layer of protection in case the box gets crushed during shipment and the materials don't spill out everywhere. Also in your white boxes are going to be the white UPS labels. You guys are going to be returning your materials directly to the vendor this year. So you're going to have two types of labels. You're going to have a white UPS label and a green return label. The green return label is going to be in that gray envelope that is called Materials Return Kit. You're also going to be getting that envelope when you get your materials delivered to you. So what I would do is when you open up that white box, account for all your materials, grab that UPS label so you don't lose it, and put it with your other label, your green label, in that gray envelope just to keep everything together. All right, let's talk about the materials you'll be getting. So each student will have a test book. If you don't have a test book for a student, I will tell you a little bit later about how to order additional materials. Again, one test book per student. Students cannot share a test book. Now, the response booklet, the passage booklet, and the cards and strips, those are in your auxiliary kits. Those can be shared among students as long as you're using the same form as the test booklet. Okay, so for the test book, that is what the test administrator is going to be using to read from with the script and everything, and also marking the student's response. So that is the material that's going to be facing the test administrator. The response booklet is going to be facing the student, and that is where the student is going to point to or indicate their response, and then the teacher records it in the test book. Remember, the response booklet, all of the auxiliary materials must be the same form designation as the test book. The passage booklet is for the ELA materials. And then you will get card packets and strips. These are going to be organized. Now, you're not going to get it for every single content area, for every single grade level, for every single form, and I'll explain in a bit. This is called a test document configuration form. It is found at the web address on the screen. If you just click on that address and search for test document configuration, you'll get this form. And what it is it tells you what's included for that grade level or that form. So for example, for grade 3 has 3 form types, A, B, and C. For the actual test materials you'll get a test booklet and an ELA passage booklet. And then if you look under here for response booklet, you'll get an ELA and a math. Remember, you're not going to get science or social studies for 3rd grade. For your cutout, and this is important because I know a lot of times schools would call me in a panic saying, I didn't get cards and strips for such and such a test. And I would point them to this document and say, well, were you supposed to? So if you look here for grade 3, for the cutout cards, there's only cutout cards for ELA. You're going to get small and large. There aren't any for math. So that assessment didn't have any cutout cards for math. For strips, you're going to get one for ELA. And then it tells you which envelope, content type of envelope that you're going to get. So this is available for all of your grade levels and content areas. So this is grades 3 through 5. This is grades 6 through 8. And these are grades 9 and 10 ELA and all of your EOCs. So I find this helpful when you're inventorying your materials, and especially for your teacher when they have an opportunity. Remember, teachers are allowed to sit down with the materials to familiarize themselves prior to the test. This assessment is very unique in that manner. For all of you school assessment coordinators, you know teachers would never have access to secure materials prior to the test. But for this assessment, they do. They're allowed to go through the contents of their test materials. They're allowed to get their teacher-gathered things that they're going to need for assessment. and they can organize their cutouts, their strips, everything. They can highlight the book of their script. All of that can be done prior to administration. Everything that we are talking about in this presentation will be posted on the test chair information website. I apologize, I don't have it posted yet. I want to have it posted by next week. But also everything that we're talking about is also listed or posted, the portal that Yvonne talked about at the beginning of the presentation. But all of your forms are going to be here as well. Your booklet security checklist, your chain of custody, all of the forms that your administrators have to sign, they're going to be here. All right, just a reminder that any inappropriate actions by the school or district personnel can result in student or classroom invalidations and loss of teaching certificate and or involvement of law enforcement. And your test administrators are going to need to sign something to that effect. The forms are in the procedural manual in the back. I'll also have them posted on the tester information website. Remember, anyone involved in testing must sign the test administration and security agreement, and then all your test administrators need to sign the test administrator prohibited activities form. All of these forms, as I said, are in Appendix B of the procedural manual. When you guys meet with your test administrators and you're going over the things like this is where you're going to pick up stuff, this is the schedule that we're going to be following, these are the days that we're going to be testing, also make sure prior to them ever accessing any of the test materials, prior to them going through the test materials, they need to sign these documents. This is the test material chain of custody form. It basically details when you received your materials. You're going to document that on this form. You're also going to document when you prepared your materials and when you sent your materials out of the building. You also need to list anyone who has access to test materials. Remember, no more than 3 people can have access to the test room. Yvonne and I have developed a district form called the School Procedural Checklist. At the end of administration, you're going to fill out this form. You need to sign it, and your principal needs to sign it. All right, let's just talk about some general security policies and procedures. Just obviously make sure that the minute the test materials come into the building, you account for them, and everything needs to be placed in locked storage. No more than 3 people should have access to this locked storage. Remember that test booklets and auxiliary materials are all secured materials. They cannot be left unsecured. So remember, remind your teachers that when they're signing out test materials for the day, they need to go back to their room and they need to be either locked up or someplace where students do not have access to them. Teachers can't just put the box in their classroom and then walk out. So test materials must be secured at all times. And also, I'll talk about the security numbers, but you're also going to be keeping a document that tracks the security numbers whenever materials are checked out and checked back in. If you have any missing materials, you need to notify me immediately. Probably right now, you can call our office or you can email me, and I'll let you know what you need to do. But obviously, if anything goes missing, the first thing you want to do is do a complete search. If there is any breach of administration, if you find out that any inappropriate activity has happened, if anything's been photocopied, or if any information about tests have been released, contact me immediately and we can go through steps from there. All of your secured materials have security numbers. On the slide, you can see where all the security numbers are on each type of material. And remember, you're going to use this form to keep track of those materials as they're signed out and signed back in. Just another reminder, when you release test materials, they need to come back to you that day. Teachers cannot keep test materials in their rooms beyond the school day. If you have any hazardous or defective material, give us a call or email me and I'll let you know what needs to be done. All right, when you need to order additional test materials, you're going to go to the link on the screen, the TDC Documents website. It'll bring up a Google form and you can order materials. They are grouped by form number. The form letter. You do need to indicate the form. It doesn't matter which form you order, as long as you're ordering the same form for the auxiliary kit. And remember, once you place an order, you won't necessarily receive a confirmation email to pick up materials. Materials are ready the next day if you place the order before 3 p.m. If you place the order after 3 p.m., it's ready the day after. And then when you get to TDC, just give them a call. They have a wonderful curbside assistance. They'll bring the materials out to you, so just let them know that you're there. And just a reminder, anyone picking up test materials must be on the school assessment team. If you don't know what that means, school assessment coordinators know what I'm talking about. The principal needs to designate who are the approved contacts that are allowed to pick up materials. So if you send a teacher that's not on that list, they will not be allowed to pick up materials. The principal can add people. They just need to go into the portal, into the school assessment application, and add that person. Yvonne, any questions so far?
I've been answering those that are there.
Okie doke, thanks.
Oh,
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, you just answered that. Somebody was asking about picking up the materials, but you just answered that.
Okay, great. When in doubt, guys, call TDC, but yes, that the person picking up the materials must be on that school assessment team and be allowed to pick up materials for your school, and they're designated by the principal. So a pre-ID file was created from the October FTE. I also updated it in December. So what that means is any student that was either placed on modified curriculum after December 3rd or new to your school after December 3rd would not be pre-ID'd. Remember, you can order materials for them, and you're able to manually add them into the online system, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Once you get access into the online system, what you're also going to want to do is create a list through File Download Manager of students that need to be assessed with the performance task. And you do that by going into the portal, signing into the File Download Manager system. You're going to select Student Basic. You're going to select ESE Details, and obviously select whatever else you select. But I want to show you how to get to that indicator for the alternate assessment. So under ESE Details, there's a flag called Alternate Assessment. You want to make sure that that is checked off. So when you download the list, this column right here has your alternate assessment flags. A P stands for Performance Task. A D stands for Data Folio. An N or a blank means the student takes the FSA. So what you're going to want to do is download that list. It'll have every student in your building. You're going to use the filter feature in Excel, and you're going to filter all your performance tasks. P for performance tasks. Those are the students that will be testing the performance task this spring. If you have a student that is not on that list, but you know their performance task, they might have accidentally been designated as data folio, and if that happens, remember, you need to switch them to performance task. If that happens, you need to perform an interim IEP staffing and switch that student to performance task. So your responsibilities before testing, obviously you're going to receive all the test materials, maintain a record of all the security number of test materials. As Yvonne and I have been saying, you need to verify that your test administrators have attended a mandatory face-to-face training. Again, there's a link to that Google document regarding the module completion. So there's two lists, one for the mandatory face-to-face training, and then another list for the module completion. The module completion list is updated every Friday. So at some point today, it will be updated to reflect teachers who have taken the module up through today.
So Kathy,
Yeah.
a couple of questions here. So someone is asking about the last training for the test administrators. Mm-hmm. So the face-to-face training, the last one is next week on the 24th. If you have a teacher that is not on that list, please send me an email with the teacher's name and ID number. Me too. And Kathy as well. And then we'll let you know if they can participate based on the list, because we check again. And then we'll send that teacher all the Zoom link and everything else that they need for the training. So we will let people in, being that it's the last training. Someone else is asking that they're new to this role. Where can they find the booklet, security checklist, and the DOE? Is it on the DOE manual? So everything that you need is going to be in that on that site that that Kathy showed you. Back to the. You want to go back to that?
Sure, here it is. Okay, no, wait, that's not it.
That one.
Wait, I have to
know,
go
too
way
fast
back.
now.
Way back. Okay, so all of the forms, and it's not updated. Right now, all the 2020 stuff is still there. It's going to be updated this week. But all of the forms that you guys are going to need, this is the booklet security checklist. That's the one where you're keeping track of teachers signing materials in and out. That will be there, your chain of custody form. All of these forms are also in your manuals, but it's probably going to be easier for you to access these forms. So that you can just have it electronically and then print as needed. All the manuals will be listed here, but they're also listed in the FSAA portal. Okay, any other questions, Yvonne?
And someone is asking that they haven't received a TDC card. How do they get it?
I think, well, you don't receive them, you have to go get it. So if you are part of the school assessment team, you would need to go to TDC to receive it, but do me a favor and call them, 305-995-3743 or 3744. I'm not sure if their policy has changed this year, because in the past you always needed a card to pick up anything, but give them a ring and they'll let you know. They're closed on Friday, so don't call today. But Monday through Thursday, you can give them a call, or send me an email and I'll forward it to Dharma or Maria Vargas and they can let you know. Okay. Anything else, Yvonne?
Let me see. Something else came in right now. Someone is saying that they said that they would issue new cards this year.
Yes, they do issue cards every year.
Every year,
but
okay.
It's not like they mail them out to you guys. You got to go to TDC to pick them up.
You have to go get them. Okay.
Right.
And okay, so they're saying, can we refer to the 2020 procedural manual? There should be a 2020-21 procedurals manual.
Okay, guys, I haven't posted the new
one
yet. All of these materials are per year. They're new every year, so please never use a former year for any administration that you guys have for any test. I will post the 2021, but a link's in the PowerPoint, so you can actually, any of the test administration manual, procedure manual, online manual, the links are ready to go in the PowerPoint.
Someone is saying that that TDC said that no card is needed if on the list. Okay. So that answers the question. Kathy, when is the procedural checklist due?
It's going to be returned with your administrative records, and I will go over that. Everything will be due by June 8th, but I will go over the procedure for submission because we're doing something new this year regarding your DAC envelopes and such. Obviously, after testing, you're going to make sure everything has been entered. I'm going to talk about the reason not assessed in a minute because that's going to be important, especially this year, because you are going to have students that are absent. And then, of course, all the required forms need to be completed, and I will talk about how you're going to submit them. And obviously, you want to gather all your test materials, package them according to the vendor instructions, and return by the deadline. All right, for your test administrators, you want to make sure prior to them accessing any test materials, they have signed the necessary forms. When they go into the online system, they're going to be able to verify their rosters. I will talk about that in a minute. They're also going to need to get their teacher gathered materials prior to testing. So again, prior to testing, you can have them go through the test materials after they have signed the required security forms. And then during testing, the teachers will need to make sure they maintain test security. While they're administering the test, they're recording the responses in the test booklet. And then, of course, at the end of each day of testing, all materials are returned to the school level coordinator. After testing, either you or the test administrator can complete the reason not assessed in the online system. It's very easy. It's literally point and click. I'll go over that in a second. And obviously, you know, making sure everything is returned. All right, let's talk about the online system. This test, and I want to make sure everybody understands, even though you have a paper copy of the test booklet, it's really an online test. The test booklet is never scored. All responses are entered into an online system, and that is how the test is scored. There is an online system tutorial for the district coordinator and the school level coordinator, but I'll be honest, there's 6 videos, but a lot of it pertains to what Yvonne and I have to do. I think modules 1 and 3 are more specific to the school level role. You can absolutely watch these videos. They're not mandatory. I find for school level coordinators, probably a better resource is the actual guide. And there's a link to this guide on this PowerPoint. It has screenshots. It goes over what you need to do step by step. Quite honestly, the system I find very user-friendly. It's not like some of the other platforms that we use. This platform I find pretty easy to use. By next Friday, I will forward to you guys all of your usernames and passwords. I will also forward to you all of the username and passwords to your teacher. So let me explain how I created that file. I went to our data analysis and I asked for a list of teachers associated in any way, shape, or form with an access course. And I realized those might be itinerant teachers. It might not be teachers housed at your school. So if I forward to you a login for a teacher you don't know or who you know is not going to be a test administrator, just disregard it. There's no need to tell me to take the teacher off because I can't. There's nothing I can do. But this was the quickest, most efficient way I could of getting the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of teachers loaded into the system. Again, if you get credentials for a teacher who will not be testing, don't use them. If, for whatever reason, a teacher who will be testing is not, I don't give you credentials for them, you can create a username and password for the teacher. It just takes a couple of minutes, you put them in the system, and then you would pass that information on to the teacher. So once I forward to you your credentials, you're going to log in. You're going to compare the roster of students in the online system with the roster of students that you've created in File Download Manager. If there are any students listed on File Download Manager that are not in the online platform, you can manually add them. I don't need to. You can add them. Also, if you have a student who is withdrawn from your school and is still in the online system, you can indicate that they have withdrawn through the reason not assessed, and I will go over that in a minute. I get a lot of requests every year, please take the student out of my building or delete the student from my school. I can't. Once a student is in the system, they're in the system. I can only move them to another school. So for example, if you have a student that was in your school in December, but has transferred since then to another school in Dade County, all I need to do is move that student to that school, to their current location. But if the student has withdrawn from Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the only thing we can do is indicate that the student has withdrawn. I can't take the student out of the system. So you are allowed to add students. You just need their FLE ID. Remember, you're not going to use the Miami-Dade County Public Schools ID. You're going to use the FLE ID. If you get a message that says that the student already exists and you're trying to add a student, it means the student is somewhere in the system. So that usually happens when the student is either at another district or somewhere in our district. Just let me know the FLE ID. I can track the student down and get them into your school. All right, so once the teachers have access, they're going to need to check their roster. Prior to the teachers being given access, make sure that you link your students to the assessment and the teacher that's going to administer the assessment. That way the students will show up under the test administrator's roster. And then while testing is going on and while teachers are uploading students, you can monitor progress by using the assessment progress status screen. And if you look on the screen, it'll tell you if it says no assignments, it means that the student still needs to be linked to a teacher. And there's directions on how to do that. And this is just a description of what each means. Not started means that the student has been linked, but the teacher has not gone in and started indicating the online responses. In progress means the teacher's in the progress of submitting the responses, and then the little green check mark means that it has been completed and submitted. Okay, reason not assessed. In the past, only the teacher was able to do that, and I complained and complained and complained every year, and they finally listened to me. So now you and I can also have access to do this. So let's say a student is never assessed. Maybe the parent refused to bring the student in. You need to be able to indicate that. So you're going to sign in. On your landing page will be the student roster. Once you click on a student, you'll see this details come up, and you're going to click on view details. Once you click on that, there'll be a drop-down menu, and you're going to indicate why the student didn't test. In some cases, the student might have withdrawn from the system. Maybe the student is assessed on data folio. Maybe the student was absent. All of those are things that you can indicate why the student didn't test. Here is a complete listing of all the different selections that you can make. Some students will now be participating in the FSA, and you can indicate that as well.
Kathy, someone is asking about linking students to teachers. Is that done in TIDE?
No, guys, this is not FSA. This is FSAA. So TIDE is FSA. For FSAA, everything's going to be done through this online system. The link to the online system is available through the portal. And it's honestly listen, this is so much easier than TIDE, I promise you. If you can point and click, you can work this program. And I'll be honest with you, it's pretty intuitive. Once I send you guys your username and password, I will also give you little links to little screenshots I have created. They're like, I call them like little mini tutorials with screenshots that show step-by-step what you need to do. So to link a student to a teacher, you click on the student, and then if the teacher is in the system, you just find them through the drop-down. If the teacher is not in the system, you just need to add them. And you literally will select what assessment the kid is taking and the teacher who's going to administrate, and it's done. Once you do that, they will then show up in the teacher view when they sign in. Some common errors that I want to make sure I cover, and this happens every year. I mean, it happens. One of the most common ones is the teacher starts entering responses, but they accidentally are entering them into the wrong form. In other words, the kid took form B, but they have indicated form A online. If that happens, as long as the teacher has not submitted it, it takes 2 seconds for Yvonne and I to reset the test. Unfortunately, when we reset the test, all of the responses that had been entered thus far are wiped out. But if the teacher submitted, then it becomes a whole different problem, and we have to get it reset by the vendor. And it is a lengthy process because the vendor has to contact the state, and the state has to approve every reset after it's been submitted. It can take a couple hours. It can take 3 days. So that is why Yvonne and I always tell you, please make sure your teachers are keeping up with entering responses well before the deadline. Another mistake that happens is teachers might be inputting responses, but for the wrong student. Another problem that might happen is the writing, the third component of ELA, the writing part is not submitted and the teacher accidentally hits submit. So just want to make sure you go over those things with your teachers and, just making sure that they're careful when they're submitting the responses.
Kathy, we had a question in regards to what do you indicate if the parent refuses to bring the student to school?
There's no indication for that.
No indication, yes.
On your end, guys, document it. Just document it on your end. Whatever conversation you had with the parent, who it was, and the date you had the conversation. But where the state's concerned with this system, there's no way to say a parent refused. It's if the student was absent, and that's all you can do. All right, so after the assessment, you're going to prepare materials for return. Make sure you get everything back from your teachers. You're going to also make sure that you have completed all of those assessment records. Get them together. Anytime anything is lost, if you have any test books that you didn't get returned, notify me immediately, and I'll let you know what the next steps are. Okay, so when you're preparing materials for return, just gather everything together. I find it easier to group everything. So all of your administrative records, you're going to group them together. All of your test materials, you're going to group them together. And then make a pile per group type. So like all your test booklets, all your response booklets, all your passage booklets, you're going to put them together. You're also going to collect all of your writing prompt to student templates, your student outlines, the things that the students use to create their writing essay. You're going to gather that and you're going to separate that because that's going to be returned as well. Actually, no, that's going to be separated, and I'll let you know what you're going to do with that. Okay, preparing your materials for return. The biggest thing that I find that happens is people put materials in those oversized envelopes, and it's easy to figure out why. It actually says on the envelope, put your test book, your response book, and your passage booklet here and return it to your school assessment coordinator. Problem is that is just for internal transportation. In other words, that is for your teachers to return to you. When you're returning items to the vendor, make sure those big envelopes are completely emptied and you've grouped all of your secured materials by type, just like I have on the screen. You're also going to have a test materials count form in your gray envelope. You're going to need to fill that out. Once the assessment is done, you're going to include, remember, a count of all the materials that you initially received, also all of the materials that you received if you created a additional order with TDC. And these are just steps for completing the count form. It's also in your procedural manual. The same steps are there too. And then this is kind of a visual representation of how you're going to pack your boxes. Now remember, all of your unopened auxiliary kits go in first, followed by your big envelopes. They need to be empty. Remember, no test materials can be in any of the envelopes. It's harder for the vendor to unpack them. So just make sure those are all empty and placed in. And then you can see the progression of test materials that you're going to return. If you have multiple boxes, you're just going to follow this order. So like, let's say box 1, by the time you put in all your unopened auxiliaries, let's say you've filled it up, and then you start with box 2, you're going to start where you left off. So if that makes sense, so all of your like unopened auxiliary materials might go in the first box, and the second box you're going to start with your envelopes, and so on and so forth. So you get to your last box. And remember, at the very when you're done packing everything, at the very top goes your material count form, and that should be the original one. It does have a special barcode on the bottom, and it is specifically for your school, so you can't use last year's copy. You can't use a photocopy. It needs to be the original. Remember, you're going to have 2 labels for return. You've got the white UPS label. That's going to come to you in your white boxes. Remember, as soon as you get your materials, grab that label and set it aside for safekeeping. You're also going to have your green label that will be given to you in your gray envelope. So when you're packing up your materials for return, you're going to put 2 labels on your boxes. The green one and the white one, you can place it as I have on the screen. The white one has a little tab that you can rip off and retain for your records. That's going to have your tracking number. Please make sure all labels are put on the top of the box. Don't put any labels on the side. All right, we tried to do this last year, but of course testing was cut off. Because you guys are returning your materials directly to the vendor, we need to be in the loop as to when you sent them out. So there's something called the assessment verification form, or the return verification form. You're going to click on that link. You're going to go to the TDC Documents webpage, and you're going to click on the link for FSAA. This needs to be done the day before you return materials. You're going to complete the verification form with the information on the screen. You also need to indicate the tracking numbers. This is important, guys, because if we get a message that something was not returned, we can immediately contact the vendor and say, no, this is the tracking number, and we'll call UPS and we'll make sure we track that box down. But if you haven't given us any tracking numbers, there's nothing we can do. This is also verification for us to make sure that you have set a pickup for your materials to get them out of the building. Everything is due back to the vendor by June 11th, so this needs to be done by June 10th, hopefully before then. But remember, you would need to do this the day before you've scheduled the pickup. All right, these directions are included in your material return kit, but I just have them in the PowerPoint. I find that for FSAA, there's a lot more detailed information with pickup. Those of you who are school assessment coordinators that have dealt with this for FSA, knock wood, we have better luck in terms of getting things picked up because we have a shipper number and all that you can use. There's also a dedicated number for us to use. So do not request a pickup prior to April 26th. The vendor's warehouse has seasonal staff. So if you were to send your packages prior to April 26th, it's just going to go to a secretary in an office who's not equipped to deal with these materials. So they might get sent back. So please make sure you adhere to those deadlines. You can begin returning April 26th. Everything must be returned by June 11th. All right, guys, I'm going to try to hurry because I want to make sure I get through this. So your district assessment coordinator envelope, we're trying something new this year. We want you guys to submit your administrative records electronically this year, and your student work records you're going to keep at your school so that there's no need to make any trip down to TDC. So let me explain what I'm talking about. Usually you put everything in an envelope and you bring it down to TDC. What we're going to do this year is you're going to organize all of your administrative record materials by type. So you're going to have a bunch of booklet security checklists. You're going to put a pile of those. You're going to have your school procedural checklist. Remember, that's just one document. Your chain of custody form, that's one document. All of your test administrator and security agreements, you're going to have a pile of those. You're going to put that together. So each of these piles, you're going to scan into one file. So you have one file for all of your booklet security checklists, one file for your school procedurals checklist, so on and so forth. So you're going to scan them to a file. You're going to go to TDC documents. You're going to go to the DAC AR digital upload form, and you're going to click on FSAA submission. When you click on that, it's going to bring up a Microsoft form. By the way, Microsoft forms are behind our firewall, so they're protected because we do have sensitive information that you're uploading. So I just want to make sure you guys know it's not a Google form, which is not protected, not behind a firewall. It is behind our firewall for this form. When you get to this form, you're going to enter in your location number, your school name, the assessment year, and then for each item type, each file that you have scanned, you're going to click the upload file and submit the file. For your student work records, that would be all of the writing to prompt forms, the templates, the outlines, the vocabulary lists that you have. Those you're just going to keep. Do not photocopy these. Do not upload these. You're keeping these in an envelope and you're keeping it in safe storage in the test room for 1 year, and it needs to be available upon request in case we need it. Now, for those of you that don't want to deal with upload, you still can do the traditional route, and that is put them into an envelope. You will need to return them to TDC. It would need to be returned by June 8th. Student work records you can still keep at your school for a year. One thing that happens, and it's especially going to happen this year because all of the administration windows are merging into each other. Basically, everything is going on until May, just about. So you're going to have all types of materials in your test room. So just make sure that you don't confuse FSAA materials with Access for ELLs or FSA, any other testing programs. Make sure you keep them separate. Make sure that you don't accidentally send anything to the wrong vendor. Use that green original count form when you're submitting your materials. If you do get any Braille or one item per page materials, they can be returned with your regular test materials. And this is to reach out for help. The best way to contact me, guys, is through email right now. So even if you need to contact Yvonne, CC me as well. Sometimes Yvonne's all over the place. She's running around all the time. And so a lot of times what I do is say, CC me as well, and I'll make sure that I can track Yvonne down and get help for you. But let us know what you need help. Yvonne, any questions?
I answered the last ones, but I'll tell everybody just in case. Okay, I know that this was a lot of information, but this session is being recorded and we will send you the recording to the session. I posted again now at the end the link to the PowerPoint presentation so that you can have it as well. Just some important things, like Kathy said, you know, there's still a lot of not sures. We don't know what will happen, waiting for the state. So as soon as we receive additional information from the state, we will reach out to everybody to let everyone know of any changes. In regards to test administration, please, if you have, once again, if you have any teachers that still need to take the FSAA face-to-face training, the last training is next week on Wednesday. Now, what you need to do is send us an email with the teacher's name and ID number, and then we will respond to you if they can take the training or not, if depending, because we check the list, and then we will set the teacher up. You can't do it through My Learning Plan because it's already closed, but we will be happy to add the teacher if, you know, they're eligible to take the training. Everybody else has to complete the 4 online modules to be recertified, and it's up to you, the school level coordinator, to keep track that they completed those modules based on that link that Kathy revises every Friday. Let me see, there's some other questions coming in. If we do the digital DAC AR, do we still do the DAC SWR?
Yes, you have to do the DAC SWR. Remember, you're keeping that at your school. So we're talking to, and this is new for us because usually we had one envelope for everything because our program is so small. This year we kind of separated it. Remember, you can't digitally upload the student work. So you're going to just keep that at your school. But we are talking about 2 separate sets of documents. Your DAC AR would be all of your administrative records. You can upload that, or you can bring that down to TDC, and then your student work records are all the things associated that the student produced for their essay. That's going to be kept at your school for a year.
And I think that's it for the questions.
Let me real quick clarification about who's being tested. A question about current school year, unless or are they retaking anything? So the only thing that students would need to test that if they didn't get it last year is if they're graduating, if it's the grade 10 ELA or the Algebra 1. Those assessments have to be conducted. A student has to have a score if you're going to write the waiver or if they're going to be used for graduation. If they were enrolled in any other course like biology or any other ESE tested course or ELA grade 3 or whatever they were enrolled in last year, obviously they don't need to make that up. They're just going to be assessed with what they're currently enrolled in this year. Yes, the Google document is a live document, meaning it's what I have downloaded this week. Now remember that it will be updated every week, and it's only as good as what information I've received from the state. So it's supposed to be updated every Friday. I will update it every Friday. Okay, question about history required for a current senior. Again, guys, you're only going to administer an EOC if the student is currently enrolled in that EOC. There is nothing that you have to go back and make up if the student missed an EOC. But otherwise, Yvonne, anything else?
No, I think we're good. If they have any questions, just reach out to us. One or the other will respond, and we'll go from there.
Okay, guys. I'm sorry we went a little long. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy testing. Let us know what we need to do to help and support you.
Exactly.
But take care.